All right, we ready?
All right, I'm recording.
You're listening to the Station 90 podcast with your hosts, Brian.
Beth?
And Mario. So, as you probably guessed, this week is our first episode of April, which means this is our April Fool's joke. We got you. We are not actually a Universal podcast.
Haha.
Joke's on you guys. But we are going to take the time, since we had a couple questions, to talk about Universal this week and give some tips on how to add Universal into your Disney vacation. But it wouldn't be a normal Station 71 show if we didn't start off with the news. So I guess I'll take the two that I had in here, Beth, and then you can take yours. We'll go that way.
Okay.
So first thing that we have up is that dates for Very Merry Christmas and Not So Scary were released. We have a couple dates for Not So Scary starting at pretty much the usual time that they would start at. I think the first day is August 17th. Yeah, that looks like the first one. And it goes all the way up to Halloween. They vary in pricing from $79 to $125. And with Very Merry, it starts November 8th and goes up to the 21st, also varying in pricing from about $90 to $125. Super exciting, super weird to talk about the fact that we're getting those now. I mean, it makes sense with people planning their trips for them now, but it still feels too early for me.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So our other news topic is that Club 33 pricing and benefits for Walt Disney World locations were released. As everybody probably knows, there's going to be 4 different locations, one in each park. And the benefits to the membership, well, first of all, your starting fee is going to be a crisp $33,000 just to join. And then every year after that, to maintain it, you'll have to dish out $15,000. But your membership will include access to all 4 of the Disney World locations, a premier passport for the member, their spouse, and any children under the age of 26, with the premier passport being an annual pass for both Disney World and Disneyland. It also includes 50 one-day park hopper tickets per year, 5 day-long VIP guided tours, access to a private concierge service, and a limited number of instant FastPass Plus reservations. So, we were kind of talking about this a little bit before the show started, and adding it all up, the annual fee is not that crazy if you have it to spend. It's the having it part that I think is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more than what I would be able to afford, and more than any of us would be able to afford. So that prices all of us out. If anyone that listens to the show wants to get us into Club 33, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I think that it's definitely, if you can afford it and you go to Disney that often, the price is definitely a justifiable thing for all that you get.
Yeah, for sure. We did a little bit of math, and approximately $5,000 is just the park hopper tickets that you get per year, which, assuming are going to be for your family and friends, and I don't know, I guess you could sell them if you wanted to, but I'm sure there's something in the contract about that. But kind of that alone brings the price, the annual fee down to $10,000, and then the VIP tours is probably, I don't know, another what? Math real quick.
I would actually be interested to see what the comparable DVC contract would be, like how many points you would get for a DVC contract of that price versus the Club 33 pricing.
Yeah. That's a good point.
We'll have to do some math and recoup next week and discuss that a little bit, because I feel like, the conversation around DVC is always about the pricing, is it worth it? And, you can throw numbers around for that all day, and in the end, it all depends on your contract. But really, I think a good thing to bring this into perspective would be how many days can you stay at a DVC resort for that same pricing?
Yeah, I guess the appeal here is that, on the DVC side, you not free, but you get to stay at the resort as part of your contract. But then this is you get to go to the parks and have this private lounge anytime you want as part of your contract. So ideally, you would be rich enough to have both, and then you just get to live super bougie.
Gosh, I wish I had that kind of money.
Yeah, same.
So, you were doing some math.
I do wonder.
Right?
What's that?
I said you were doing some math on that, right?
Yeah, so I don't know what they mean by day long, but I was just kind of approximating. The 5 tours are going to be at least $500 to $1,000, like value, if not way more than that, because it's probably, I would assume, just your party, maybe, or maybe it's just Club 33 members. I guess more details will probably come out. But I was also wondering, I wonder what they mean by instant fast pass plus reservations. Like, does it mean they book it for you automatically and you just have it there, or you go to the park and you have these options and you're guaranteed to get them? So I'll be interested to see more details as they come.
Honestly, if I paid the kind of money that it costs to get into this, I hope I would have just like a card I could flash at any fast pass kiosk and just walk up and get on.
Right?
This is my fast pass, let me in.
The special one for Flight of Passage. Just walk. You have a special Club 33 line.
Oh gosh. So, do we want to start talking about our topic this week?
Let's do it.
Okay, yeah. So we've gotten asked a couple times to talk about Universal. Not even like an in-depth tour of Universal or anything, just kind of how to fit it into your Disney park trip. I know I get this question pretty often from friends that are going down and want to hit everything they can, and I'm sure you guys do too. But we've been seeing it pop up in our emails, and we thought, what better time than April 1st to talk about Universal? So I kind of want to start this off.
Yeah, because it's a joke.
Oh, ouch. Shots,
no, I'm just kidding.
Shots fired. I kind of want to start this off with, like, ways to get to Universal, how far it is from Disney and stuff like that. Kind of talk about the travel part, because obviously if you're staying on Disney property, you're not going to have the same kind of travel procedures that you would to get from a Disney park or a Disney hotel to a Disney park. I want to say, because I've done this once or twice before, and it's typically not far. I think the most that we've driven was probably like 20 minutes. Does that sound about right to you guys?
Yeah, I was about to say, I think
traffic.
It's about 15 to 20.
Yeah, it's super close. So obviously, if you're staying at a Disney resort, the only way to get to Universal would be through either renting a car, bringing your own vehicle. You could Uber there, get a taxi. There's plenty of options. But you will not have that Disney transportation, and that's kind of an important thing to point out. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you know that it's not included in Disney. You know that it's its own separate entity, so we won't go that far into it. But I know both of you, obviously, Beth, you guys drive down, and Brian, you're local enough that if you really wanted to go to Universal, you guys would have your own car, correct?
Right.
Okay, so that's your preference in travel. When we did it...
Well, actually, I would say, while it's definitely nice to have a car down there, on my last trip, I didn't go to the parks at Universal, but I did go to CityWalk for dinner one night, and we took an Uber because it was just so much more convenient than having to, because you have to pay for parking, and you have to park, and you have to walk there, and we're just like, why don't we just take an Uber? Because it's really not that bad. It's like maybe $15-$20, and that covers like per trip, and that is going to cover your whole party of, I think the regular cars will seat like 3 or 4 additional people.
That's not bad at all.
But yeah, it's really not. And just the convenience of not having to drive with insane Orlando drivers is worth it to me. So while it's nice to have a car, Uber or Lyft are actually my preference of how to get outside of Walt Disney World.
That's actually really reasonable. When we did it, because the one time that I went, we went with our, like, half of my mom's family, which is fairly big. We rented a shuttle. I can't remember who we rented it through, but it was like a giant van, and they picked us up at where was Bay Lake Towers, and we drove from there to CityWalk. They dropped us off right outside of the park. It was super easy to get into. And then the other time I actually stayed at Universal at Cabana Bay. Yeah. And that was easy enough. If you are staying at a Universal resort, they do have some, like, transportation for you. There are buses you can get on to get from the hotel, but this is, obviously we're talking in terms of, like, Disney and, relevance from there. But I would probably, if I was trying to go from a Disney hotel, I'd probably also do Uber, knowing that it's that inexpensive.
Mm-hmm. I did want to point out, just from my personal experience, just a semi-relevant tip, is that even if you're not going to the Universal parks, even if you just want to go check out CityWalk, which CityWalk is really cool, so I would recommend it, the security is actually outside of CityWalk, so you have to go through security to get into CityWalk itself, not just to the parks. So just be aware of that you're not taking stuff that may be on Universal's list. I'm not sure of exactly what their rules are as far as bringing food or whatever into the parks, but my dad, being the country gentleman that he is, had his pocket knife with him and luckily had to give it to a very nice security guard to hold for him until we were done with dinner. So just a little tip out there for everybody.
So I actually think that that's probably a really good transitioning point to move on to actual Universal itself. So when you get to Universal, there's technically 3 parks. I haven't been to Volcano Bay, so we're going to leave that one alone for a little bit. But Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure are in the same location. You do have to get through CityWalk, which is essentially their version of Disney Springs, to get to them. And like Beth said, you do have to go through security to get to the 2 parks. Now, let's talk a little bit about CityWalk. Beth, you said you were there pretty recently. What was your experience with CityWalk? What did you guys do? You said you went there to eat dinner, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I really like CityWalk. I've been to CityWalk several times, and while I love Disney Springs, I feel like CityWalk is much more oriented around, like, experiencing stuff, like going out to eat and going out for drinks and whatever. Like, it does have stores, but even the stores are a lot of them are kind of an experience, because it's like, these really niche kind of things. We went into this store, and I can't remember what it's called, but it had all of this awesome stuff that was like anime and Studio Ghibli and
I know what you're talking about
stuff. And it was just like, I really liked the fact that it's kind of more centered around doing stuff rather than buying stuff, which is cool. It's also, I think, a lot more geared towards adults versus Disney Springs. It's kind of got more of a late night bar vibe, in my opinion. But yeah, we ate at this place that was really cool, and I feel bad that I can't remember the name, but it was like a fusion kind of place, and it was like burgers and sushi.
Cowfish.
Yes. And while being a vegetarian / vegan, there wasn't a whole lot for me to eat. The veggie burger was really delicious, but my dad got burgushi, which is like basically sushi with like hamburger meat. Like, it was like a sushi roll, but the stuff on the inside was basically a cheeseburger. So it was really an interesting thing that I feel like, again, kind of goes back towards the experience of it rather than the buying of it.
I think I would actually pretty much agree with you on that. And I love Cowfish. We went there the trip that we actually stayed in Universal. And I love sushi and I love cheeseburgers. So, like, this was just the perfect place for me. And their food is so good. I could not recommend that enough if you want to try something different. But I think I totally agree with that.
And while, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the whole vibe of Disney World where it's just like everything's magical and the outside world doesn't exist and you're in this like pristine, perfect place and everybody's nice to you. I like the more realistic vibe of CityWalk because instead of feeling like cast members, they feel like regular people, which is nice to have that in a kind of a setting that, I don't know, it's still kind of a theme park setting, but it doesn't make you, it makes you feel like more realistic, I guess.
Yeah.
They can make jokes with you that may or may not be appropriate for Disney property.
So, Brian, do you have any experience with CityWalk or anything that you want to talk about?
So the last time that I went to Universal was probably close to 10 years ago, so I don't have a very fond memory of it. And as far as I know, it's been built up a lot more in recent years from what it used to be. So yeah, I'm definitely no expert on Universal.
So this is going to be like a very interesting like learning experience for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I have planned on going, now since I'm so close to it now. But yeah, I don't know, I've never gotten around to it. Having the annual pass for Disney, it's kind of like every weekend we think about going, it's like, yeah, but we basically already paid for Disney, so we could just do that. But yeah, I would like to go, and hopefully this gives me some inspiration to do that.
I would definitely say, even if you don't go to like, you don't want to buy the park tickets and everything, check out CityWalk. Like, just walk around, see what they've got, to offer. It's going to give you a good idea on the general vibe of Universal. At least that's kind of how I see it. From there, you actually have like a bunch of different shops, a bunch of different stores and things to check out. A lot of places to eat. The only places I've ever actually eaten at were Margaritaville, Cowfish. Gosh, what else did we eat at while we were down there?
Have you been there since Toothsome opened?
I have not, and I want to go back just to see Toothsome.
Yeah, I have friends that live down there, and I've seen pictures of their milkshakes. For anybody listening that might not know, Toothsome Chocolate Emporium is known for its like insane milkshakes where they're literally topped with like an entire cupcake or like chocolate covered pretzels and brownies and just crazy. Like, you look at it and you go into a sugar coma.
Yeah, and they look really good, really hard to eat, drink, whatever you would do with them. But I want to go back so bad just to try them.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that goes back to the experience of it. But I would definitely need to split that with one or two other people.
The other thing that we did was the NBC Sports Grill and Brew, too. That was fairly new when we went to Universal. And that was okay. I mean, it was a sports bar, but I'm looking at the list of things now to try to, like, spark my memory on stuff that I've done in CityWalk. Oh, the other thing that's here that I guess would be one of the more advertised things is the Blue Man Group. Have either of you done that? Okay. I mean, if you've seen anything about the Blue Man Group, this is your typical Blue Man Group experience. This is actually in the old Nickelodeon building. So from, when we were younger and they used to do the filmed in front of a live studio audience thing at Nickelodeon Studios, this is the building that was in.
Well, now that makes me kind of not want to do it because I'm bitter.
So the funny thing is, apparently, like, most of this building is gone. Like, I think the other half of the building is still, like, pretty much intact, but the room that the Blue Man Group is in is pretty much all the same, or is all changed except for the bathrooms. The tile in the bathrooms is still that slime green color, which is so weird.
God, awesome.
But we did this. It was a fun experience. It's the Blue Man Group. They're going to make you, you know, stand up and dance and clap your hands and stuff. So if you're not a fan of crowd interaction, this is not for you. But this was a cool experience. I would also probably recommend that to anyone that wants to do that.
So you do or do not have to go into the park to do that?
You do not. It's technically part of CityWalk. It's like on the very outside of Universal Studios, if I remember correctly. Like, you come up on the actual Studios park, and there's a building off to your left that's got a big sign that says Blue Man Group, and you actually go that way to get into it. It's before the turnstiles and everything, so you don't have to. I don't think you have to have park tickets to get in. I know we did, but I don't remember actually going near the turnstiles or anything to get into the park.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and it's on the corner of Production Plaza and Minion Way.
Yeah, the weird thing about that, though, is, like, if I remember correctly, we didn't actually have to go in. It's, like, by where the giant globe is, right out front of the park. And if you, like, go a little bit back towards, like, Hard Rock, it's that way.
Yeah, it looks, on this map, it looks directly behind Hard Rock, so that's cool. Because, I mean, when it was Nickelodeon and you had to go into the park, so I guess they must have made some other entrance or something?
I honestly do not know, because as much as I dreamed about going to the Nickelodeon studios when I was a kid, I never was anywhere near it.
I never went inside of it, but I was at Universal when it was still, like, in action. I had a friend that got slimed, and I was so jealous of her.
So I guess since we're in that direction, we can go into Universal, like the Universal Studios, which is the main, like, production side of the park, or the park that was supposed to represent, like, movie production and stuff like that. Most of the buildings here are themed kind of like a production studio. Here's where you have the attractions like Minion or Despicable Me, Rip Rocket, Shrek, E.T., Men in Black, Mummy. Any highlights from this park? Anything that you want to touch on, Beth?
Well, a lot of people, you know, you got to be a Disney person or you got to be a Universal person. You can't be both. And while I'm definitely more so on the Disney side, like if I had to pick, obviously I would pick Disney. But I really actually like Universal. It is a little bit dated, and I feel like they could do something with that to make it more modern, I guess. But it has some really great attractions. I particularly love the Mummy roller coaster. I think it is awesome.
Same. I 100% agree with you. It is a little bit dated, but I think that if you're a thrill person, like if you love roller coasters and thrill rides, you'll fit right in at Universal.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Specifically with Universal Studios having Rip Rocket, which is, you know, the big roller coaster that you see as soon as you walk in, and the Mummy, those are the two, like, big thrill attractions in this park. I think that they're both pretty good thrill rides.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Mummy. I think the Rip Ride Rocket is really cool. Like, the first time I rode that, I was so enamored with the fact that you got to pick what song you were listening to when you rode. I thought that was, like, the coolest thing ever. I don't know if they still do that. I'm assuming they do.
They still do. And did you know that there are secret songs that you can pick on the Rip Rocket?
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so what song did you pick?
I honestly cannot remember because it was a while ago, but I know that... Hold on, I gotta go through the list of these because I don't want to say something that's wrong. Yeah. Okay, so if you push in 901 on your song selection on the keypad, it gives you Moving Right Along from the Muppet movie. And
oh my gosh.
there's also, you can also put the Rainbow Connection on there too. but that was the one that I really wanted to point out because I know that we're all Muppet fans here.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. I wish I had known that. But the only time I have ridden this, well, I rode it twice in the same trip, and I was not nearly a theme park aficionado that I am now. But I do remember that I listened to some song by the Ting Tings the first time. And then, no, it was Shiny Toy Guns. And then the second time I listened to The Devil Went Down to Georgia.
There's so many like weird songs on that list, but I think it's really cool and it makes it a unique experience that you can change the song every time you go on. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Plus, it's absolutely nuts that you go like directly vertical when you're going up.
Oh yeah, that freaked me out. I don't know what it is, but like I can hype myself out of rides like that so easily. But then the second I'm standing in line, I'm like, nope, can't do it.
I think a lot of people feel that way. I think the like aesthetic of it turns a lot of people away because they see that like vertical spot and they're like, oh no, I can't do that. But I'm like, in my opinion, it's just like, that's the first part, you know, the rest of it's just a regular roller coaster.
That is literally the worst part of the roller coaster too, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but I think it's a pretty awesome ride.
So Mummy, we talked a little bit about that. I love the Mummy. I think this is actually probably my favorite attraction on this side of the park. That one,
I would probably agree.
That's one that like I don't think that anything in that feels dated to me at all. Like, you know, we were saying some of the stuff here feels a little bit out of place and dated, but I think even like down to the special effects of this attraction, like this feels very good. Like it just, the last time we were there, I rode it 5 times, I want to say, in like one day. And that's, you know, that's crazy for me.
So when was I'm sorry if you already said this, when was the last time you went?
I want to say the last time I was there was probably 2015.
Okay, so you've been a lot more recently than I have. The only part of Universal I've been to, like, since 2010 or 2011 is Harry Potter.
I will actually be able to tell you when the last time I went was, because I have pictures of that on Facebook.
So did you ever go, I know obviously Brian, you went as a kid. Did you ever go as a kid, Mario?
Nope. So funny enough, the first time that we went was in 2014. Yeah, 2014 was the first year that we went. And we went like as a side on our Disney trip. And then my parents, one year for Christmas, I have to say it was probably, yeah, it had to be 2015. My parents got, or no, it was the start of 2016. That's when it was. My parents paid for a trip for us and them to go stay at a Universal hotel and go to the parks for 4 days.
Okay.
Which I'll get to how long I feel is appropriate to stay there in a minute, or well, later in the episode, because I want to kind of like go over everything and then like we'll combine it and say, hey, how long do you think is appropriate for you to go to Universal for, kind of thing. But the more recent one was the one that I feel like I did a lot more stuff on. And staying there made it a lot easier to go through the parks and do a lot of different stuff. But that was the last time I was there.
Okay, the last time I was there was maybe... Well, I probably was there in around 2015, but like I said, all I did was Harry Potter, so I didn't really... I think I maybe did some of Islands of Adventure, like other stuff, but other than Harry Potter, it was extremely limited what we took the time out to do. So most of my experience for the parks in general is going to be from 2011 and prior. So we'll kind of be on the same page,
Okay,
Brian.
good. Not by myself.
It's going to be an interesting experience. So bear with us if we get some stuff wrong, because obviously we're not Universal experts. But the one other attraction I do kind of want to talk about is Men in Black, because I really liked that attraction too. I don't know if you guys have too much experience with that, but I really enjoyed that. I like the whole like arcade shooter kind of attraction thing. I don't know why, but to me that's really, really fun. And the cool thing about this one versus the two that we have in, well, actually more Toy Story Mania, but this one has like animatronics and stuff like that going on in the ride. So I always thought that was really cool for Men in Black to have that kind of like dark ride aspect to it as well. But that's really cool. I do like that one.
Yeah, I like that one too. That's actually one of the ones that we did do on my most recent trip. But the only problem I had with it was I feel like it's, again, kind of going back to the same concept as it's a little bit dated. But overall, I thought it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I can agree with it being dated. There are, I want to say, yeah, this Fast and the Furious is coming up in this park, and Jimmy Fallon is in there too. I haven't done the Jimmy Fallon experience. I have heard good things about it, so I'm going to not really touch that one. But let's take a walk back into the park and talk about Diagon Alley, because I know you're probably really excited to talk about this, Beth.
Oh my gosh. It's so good.
So this is a good spot to kind of transition between the two parks that Universal has, specifically because there's one attraction that actually bridges the two together. If you go into Harry Potter, or the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, there's a section for Hogsmeade and a section for Diagon Alley. I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, so I don't know, you probably have a little bit more of a knowledge about the universe than I do, but the two are bridged together by the Hogwarts Express attraction, which you have to have tickets to both parks to get on. But I guess, do you want to talk about this one a little bit? Because I don't really know. Like, I've been here, but I could not tell you anything about Harry Potter.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting when people are big, I don't know why, but when people are big Disney fans, but they're not big Harry Potter fans, because for some reason, I guess because they go hand in hand for me, that they should go hand in hand for everybody. But I am a huge Harry Potter fan, so I've been to the Harry Potter parks 3 or 4 times now. A lot of people, I think, see the Hogwarts Express as like it's like a kind of cool thing, but it's just really a way to get from one park to the other. And no, you're absolutely wrong. It is so cool, especially if you're a Harry Potter fan, because I don't want to give too much away, but it's actually an experience. It's actually an attraction. It's not just getting you from one to the other. So I would highly recommend it. And not only that, but I think it's fun to do both of the Harry Potter parks in the same day, because you get like totally immersed rather than doing them on separate days and not doing the Hogwarts Express. I feel like that really adds to the whole experience.
So I guess I'll give my spoiler-free decision now, because you made a good point. But the way that I think it's the best way to tour Universal, I think 3 days is the max that anyone should spend at Universal, like 3 consecutive days, if you're going to really stretch it out on your trips, with dedicating 1 day just to Diagon Alley and the other half of
Hogsmeade.
Thank you. Yeah, so I would dedicate an entire day to just doing them, because even doing like one side in your Universal Studios day and then your other side in the Islands of Adventure day, it doesn't do it justice. You have to ride the Hogwarts Express between the two of them, because it really is an experience. And I would say even go back and forth, because they're two different experiences going one way versus the other way.
Yeah, that's the one mistake that I think I made, is not doing it both ways. But I'll be back.
So on the Diagon Alley side, do you have any comments about here? Anything that you want to talk about here?
I almost hate to start with it, rather than Hogsmeade because, in my opinion, they took I really like the Hogsmeade section, don't get me wrong, but I feel like everything that I could have complained about there, they fixed in Diagon Alley. But just, I guess, is to try and keep it as spoiler-free as possible, the main attraction, the Escape from Gringotts ride, is easily in my, like, top 10 favorite attractions of all time. Like, it is absolutely insane. Like, it's 3D, and it's a roller coaster, and it's, like, practical effects. And on the same note, the other one, the one that's in Hogsmeade, is a similar... I think it is 3D.
It is.
It's gotta be. But, yeah, so they did so good with both of these attractions because they took all of these elements and they threw them together, and I don't even know how they did it so well, but they did. And even if you're not a Harry Potter fan, if you like thrill rides in general, or if you just like really immersive rides in general, definitely take the time to do these because they're insane.
And we talked about this a little bit last week with how Universal gets a bad rep for having screen attractions. I think this is a perfect example of how you can do screens right.
I agree.
Because in this instance, it's not like there are screens in front of you, and a lot of the ride wouldn't be the same if you took that screen out. But the ride system itself and the practical effects also lend in such a hand to it that makes it almost, I would say definitely I agree that it is in a top 10 place in my top attractions.
Yeah, the other thing I will say for Diagon Alley versus Hogsmeade is that I feel like Diagon Alley is, like, pretty spot on. Like, there are a few things at Hogsmeade where it's like, this kind of feels out of place because this isn't canon. But I feel like as far as, like, in a canonical sense, Diagon Alley, like, really hit the nail on the head. For example, like, the wand shop, Ollivander's, they have one in Hogsmeade and they have one in Diagon Alley. When, in the books, it's in Diagon Alley. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, just being like the huge nerd that I am. Kind of put me out of place, but the experience itself is cool enough where you can kind of overlook it. But yeah, like I said before, I just feel like they did pretty much everything right in Diagon Alley.
And I really think that this is a case of theming just spot on done right. Like, I have never been to a part of a park, and this goes a lot into, like, things that Disney can do with Star Wars Land to make it, like, excel at theming. But I have never walked into a part of a park and just felt like I wasn't where I was 5 minutes ago. Like, I think from the second you step into this part of the park, it's like you're instantly immersed in where you're supposed to be. And even down to the stores and the giant dragon on top of Gringotts, like, there's so much done right with the theming here.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how they took the existing structure of the park and they made this work to their advantage, because for anyone who may not be a huge Harry Potter fan, the way that you get to Diagon Alley is through this brick wall. And they actually did that. Like, when you're on the outside, I mean, you don't, like, actually, it doesn't, like, move in the movies. That would be really awesome if it did. Which I don't think is impossible considering that freaking mirror in Enchanted Tales with Belle. So Universal needs to get on that. But I digress. When you're on the outside of the brick wall, it's just like, it looks like a regular street. Like, how Mario's saying that Universal Studios, the theme of it is that it's kind of looks like a production set. And it does from the outside as well. Aside from, there's this part that's, oh my gosh, the name escapes me.
Describe it. I'm looking at a map, so I'll probably be able to help you out.
It's where the Order of the Phoenix headquarters is.
Oh, yeah, I really can't help you
But I
with that.
can't, oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on this. But it's the facade of Sirius's house, basically. And it even has, like, every few minutes, like, Creature, the house elf that lived there, will, like, peek out one of the windows. And then you go through this brick wall and you're, like, instantly you're there. Like, you're just completely immersed in it. You are in a different world. And I really, really like that about Diagon Alley, which is one of the things that when I said there was a few things that I didn't like about Hogsmeade, one of the things that I didn't like about Hogsmeade is because I feel like the transition's really abrupt from one part of, like, what I think is, like, Jurassic Park on one side and that obscure water Atlantis Sinbad thing.
Yeah, you're
on the other side,
right?
But I feel like you go from there to Hogsmeade so quickly that you don't really have time to adjust. You're like, wait, what? But then Diagon Alley is just like, I don't know, it's a different experience.
Well, and the other thing about Diagon Alley is they kind of alert you that it's coming too. Like, with Islands of Adventure, that park is one big circle around the lake, right? Like, there's obvious transitions between land to land in that park. But like you said with Diagon Alley, you have the facades of the houses out front. You have the night bus. Like, there's a couple signs that this is where you're headed and this is where you're supposed to be. But the second you turn that corner through the brick wall, like, you're just instantly locked in. This is the theming. And the cool thing about that is they did sightlines really well. Like, we talk sightlines on this show a lot. But this is a case of, like, you cannot see anything until you pass through that brick wall.
Right.
And that is how you should do it in terms of theme park theming.
100% agree. It's like, with Hogsmeade, I feel like you feel like you're in a theme park. But with Diagon Alley, you feel like you're in Diagon Alley.
Right.
So, I could go on all day about how much I love it.
Do you have any stores or anything that you particularly, like, stood out here? Because a lot of Diagon Alley is shopping, which is what you kind of would expect it to be, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, like I was saying, Ollivander's wand shop, I would definitely recommend not only going in to shop and look around, but there's a little experience that you can do beforehand that usually has a pretty long line because they only allow in, 15 or so people at a time. Or at least that's how the one in Hogsmeade works. I'm assuming it works the same over here. But I would definitely recommend doing that as well because that's a really cool little added experience that you can get. And I think it's really cool that they have actual, like, storefronts, not only just facades of, like, stores that were mentioned in the books, but ones that you can actually go in. Like, the ice cream parlor is, like, exactly the way that it was described in the book. And you have, like, a little owlry kind of thing, which I don't know if that was explicitly described in the book, but it's just, the shops are really cool. And not only just that, but there's a couple of things that aren't shops that I think really stand out as far as the experience goes. One being that apparently you can talk to the goblins in Gringotts.
I have heard that.
I have never done it myself, but I think that that's really cool. And then there's also this, like, little stand that has these elixirs that I think is really neat. It's kind of cheesy, but I really like it. And basically you buy a bottle of gilly water, which is a thing from the books, but it's a bottle of water. And you get an elixir, and they have different ones for, like, I don't know, different whatever's intelligence or spirit or whatever. I don't remember exactly what they're for, but they add flavor to your water. And it's really cool with the detailing because it looks like a little bottle of potion. And each one of them has, like, a number on it. Like, I don't know, the fire potion is number 498. And that number corresponds with a page of one of the books that particular thing is mentioned, which I thought was a really nice detail.
That's cool.
That is really cool. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Do you also want to talk about Nocturne Alley a little bit? Because
Oh my
that's
gosh.
a very tiny detail, but that also is very important in the theme.
Yeah. It's really, like, that's another part that they really, like, took it straight out of the books and I thought was really cool. It's like, it's genuinely got this, like, creepy, spooky vibe to it. Where you're just, like, you feel like you're somewhere you're not supposed to be. And I really
honestly,
like that.
The funny thing about this is that, like, when we went here, I honestly remember just kind of happenstancely walking upon this, like, part of Diagon Alley, and it was just so weird because you walk into it and, like, it's instantly dark, which is really cool. Like, they did a really good job of kind of isolating this section and making it feel very creepy.
Yeah, for sure.
I really did like this. And, you know, even though I'm not a big Harry Potter fan, like, my girlfriend is, she loves Harry Potter. She was in her glory in this entire section of the park. But I really thought that this was a very nice touch and very well executed.
Yeah, for sure. And just, like, I'm pretty sure you can buy everything in Borgin and Burke's, which is like the, I don't know, bad people shop basically in the books, and they have, like, replicas of the different, like, the cursed necklace and this, like, Slytherin locket and stuff like that. And I think that you can buy them for a really exorbitant price. But even if you don't, just, like, looking at them is really cool because they, again, just look like they pulled them out of a page of a book. Or the movie.
Yeah, I think this was really well done. And I did really like that store, too. It was really neat because even the props, or not the props, but, like, the replica things, they look straight out of the movies.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that's straight out of the movies is the Weasley Brothers shop. It's like the facade to the candy to the pranks, like, everything about it is just, like, hit the nail on the head. And I think it's so cool. Like, I hesitate to say that they did it better than certain parts of Disney. But I really do feel like, as far as immersiveness goes, it is high up on the list. Because you can buy the candy that they talk about. You can buy butterbeer. You can, you know, you can get a wand. They have another thing that we didn't talk about was the interactive wands that they have. You buy them and they're replicas of the different characters' wands, but there's different parts of Diagon Alley. I don't know if they do. I think they maybe have parts in Hogsmeade as well, where you wave your wand and, like, something happens. Like, different effects happen, which I think is really cool.
I think there might be, but it's, if anything, it's more in Diagon Alley. Mm-hmm. Have you done the wand things?
I bought one and did a couple of them, but it was just that one time for, like, I don't know, half an hour.
There's a lot. Like, there's a very good amount of the interactive wand stuff. I was actually very surprised at that. They give you a nice little map with it, which I'm sure you saw. Mm-hmm. But if you go around, there's a ton of them throughout the park. And it's very similar to, like, the Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom setup, where it is indicated on the ground where you have to stand and, you know, the motion that you have to do to activate it. But I was very surprised with how many spots there were for it, because to me, like, you know, we've talked about the whole call and answer that Universal and Disney are having right now with Harry Potter stuff, but I really feel like Universal took a huge risk with implementing these two sections of the park in the way that they did. And even down to the point that there's, like, you know, Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom has a couple ports throughout all the different areas, but we've talked about it before. They're always so backed up and so crowded because there's not a lot of them. But with Diagon Alley, like, yeah, there were some spots that there were lines here and there, but when we went, it was never more than like 2 or 3 people. And that's the thing that I thought was really cool about it, was like they give you that option to have the experience, and you can go and do it, but it's not going to feel like, oh, well, why am I actually waiting here if this is just a little kind of thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that we also didn't mention is if you are a Harry Potter fan and you want to, you want to get in on this wand thing, but you don't want to buy the interactive one because it is a little bit on the pricier side, you can buy just replica wands as well, which is really neat because if you want to, get in and have a nice little souvenir, these are cool things to bring back.
But they are made of resin, so they're not meant to be used with a costume unless you're going to take really good care of them.
Yes, very true.
One of my friends had several of the replica wands and like dropped one at his house or something and it broke, and he was devastated because while I think the interactive ones are more expensive, they're still not like cheap by any means. I want to say they're like $30 or so.
That's probably about right, yeah.
And I just also want to point out, you can get your house scarves here, which is really cool. It looks exactly like the ones in the movies, but they are $40. So that's a little side note. I was a little sticker shocked at the fact that a scarf cost $40 that was made out of polyester and had 2 colors on it.
So while we're talking about pricing, the other big souvenir that's here that this really baffled me was the fact that you can buy the robes here.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone wears them. I'm not even exaggerating when I say, like, you walk into this section
hot
apart.
Florida sun.
And those things are heavy too. Like, I walked in and I was like, wow, these are so, like, I'm so immersed by the fact that, like, all the guests here are wearing these like Hogwarts robes. But then you look at the price tag and oh my God, was I blown away by how much it was.
Upwards of $100 or so?
They were well over $100. They were
really?
I want to say they were $150.
Well, maybe that was 2011 pricing, but dang.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm probably also wrong on that because it's been like 3 years since I've been there. But like, it was insane. I know that, like, because when we went, my girlfriend was like, oh, I got to look at, all the souvenirs because she's a big Harry Potter person. And she got herself the interactive wand. She got herself the scarf. But then she was looking at the robes and she was like, as much as I wanted, I can't justify it.
Yeah, like, my justification was I'm literally going to never wear this, except maybe for Halloween. Whereas the scarf I can wear anytime. Yeah. So that was way easier to justify, in my opinion. Yeah. Because, I mean, realistically, I can't imagine somebody wearing the robe. And, I mean, maybe like a kid, but I can't imagine anyone really wearing the robes outside of the parks. Like, walking down the street going to see a movie in your Harry Potter robe. Yeah. that you paid $100 plus dollars for. So it's hard for me to justify things in that sense that at least you spend a bunch of money on some, like a collectible trinket. You get to put it on a shelf and look at it all the time.
Right. But let's take this time to move from Diagon Alley, unless you have any final thoughts you want to talk about here, to Hogsmeade, and we'll discuss some of this stuff over there.
Yeah, no, let's go.
Okay, so obviously the preference in, getting from point A to point B is through the Hogwarts Express. We have kind of talked about that a little bit, but, I would say that that's definitely the preferable way, because this is in technically the back of Islands of Adventure. But when you get to there's a couple attractions in there. I would say that I think there's actually more attractions in Hogsmeade, correct?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I think the only attraction, like actual, like ride sort of attraction, is the Gringotts ride.
So, okay, I just looked it up because I'm kind of, very underprepared for this. Apparently there's only one more attraction, which is Flight of the Hippogriff. Because I think Dueling Dragons is closed now, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's true. I did get to ride it when it was the Tri-Wizard Dragon Challenge thing.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I did like that.
Now, I do remember this ride from when I was going, and it was by far my favorite ride at Universal.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. At the end, they didn't do the thing. Actually, I think for a long time, they didn't do the thing where it looked like you were going to collide, which I thought was a bummer, but it was still a really good roller coaster.
Yeah, I liked the idea that they could have ran next to each other, and at one point they did, but that's a bummer that they didn't do that for a while.
Yeah, I want to say some accident happened where some guy's leg got busted or something. I don't know. Maybe I made that up.
Who knows? But I don't remember anything about the queue or anything. Do you guys remember anything about walking up here? Because I think this one was very much they tried to theme it, but there wasn't a lot that they could do with it.
No, I remember it when it was Dueling Dragons before it got changed over to Dragon Challenge or whatever they called it. And I'll say it wasn't Disney theming, but it was kind of I thought they did a good job of the theming on this one.
I never wrote it as Dueling Dragons, but when I went as the Dragon Challenge or whatever, I do agree. I agree with you that they did the best that they could with the space that they had. They had banners for the different champions, and they had the flying car and a couple of other things here and there. And I think you went into a thing that looked like a tent.
Yeah.
Like in the movies. But I think other than that, the ride itself was, unless I'm completely wrong, it seemed totally unchanged as far as the appearance.
I think it was for the most part, but I do remember that the Tri-Wizard Cup was there, and that was probably the coolest thing.
Yes, that's cool.
But rest in peace to the Dragon Challenge and.
Yeah, do we know what's
Dragons.
going there?
I don't think so. Actually, just closed my tab by accident. Yeah, I don't think they've said anything that's going there, but someone can correct me on that one if you have that information. But we've already kind of talked a little bit about Forbidden Journey too, and how that's a very similar thing to the the whole 3D ride whatever experience. But I do have to say, if we're counting top queues, including Universal, this is going to make my list. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan. I've said that a couple times here already, but I was very blown away by how detailed this queue, this building, everything about this is.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so many references to the books and movies, and here you got the entrance to Dumbledore's office. You go through the greenhouse with all the plants, and the Sorting Hat is there, and the Mirror of Erised. It's just pretty much all of the iconic things from the books you're gonna see in this queue, which is really cool.
And the ride itself is very good too. It's also another good use of the screen technology.
Yes.
But definitely a must-do if you're coming to this park. I don't think you can come in here and not go into Diagon Alley and do this attraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, I haven't ridden it, but I was watching some ride-through videos and then a thing kind of a behind-the-scenes of how the ride vehicle works. And this is definitely a very, very cool type of ride vehicle that they came up with for this one.
It's basically on an arm, right?
Right, and it's a combination of a screen, but you are moving on a track system, and then you have an arm that rotates about to give you the movement effect. So it's very cool. I don't,
Yeah.
obviously I'd love to see Disney like take something like this and implement it, in some of their ride systems.
Yeah, for sure. I love the mixture of the screen technology and the practical like props and stuff.
Yeah.
Everything is so detailed, and it's not overly screen, which is really nice.
And like obviously I'm not a big fan of screen projection based rides, and I've said that before, but I think it's kind of obvious that this is where a lot of attractions are moving to. And, if they're done right, and this looks like it's done pretty well from what I've seen so far, then, I can definitely get behind that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would, like you guys said, I would really like Disney to take some notes from this. And I think we'll see that. I think, they tested the waters a little bit with River Journey. I drew a blank on that one really badly. But I think they took like some notes with that, tried the screens out a little bit, and saw how it did and didn't work. But incorporate more practical effects, incorporate some extra stuff, and do unique ride systems. And I think Disney could nail this just as well as Universal did.
Yeah, I think so too. I do think the thing that Universal had going for, like, in its favor was the fact that the world was already so well developed that they pretty much just had to figure out how to make it work instead of actually coming up with the concepts. And not only that, but just the amount of people that have such a strong emotional attachment to this series, myself included. It's like, our generation grew up with these characters. Like, they were pretty much the same ages as us as the movies went on, or at least I know you guys are a few years younger than me, but they were pretty much, it was like right there. Just, I was growing up, and Harry and Ron and Hermione were growing up. So it's like, got a really, really strong emotional attachment, which also, Disney definitely has strong emotional attachments. I have a lot of strong emotional attachments to Disney characters as well, but it's different in the sense that this was like years and years and years that I grew attached to these characters in this world. Whereas while I absolutely adore certain Disney characters, the most amount of sequels of a good Disney movie is what? Toy Story?
Yeah, Toy Story, and I guess you could even say Cars, because Cars has its
Aladdin.
own land. Yeah.
It's like, I can't think of like a legitimate Disney animated film that's had more than 3.
Yeah, and even if you think about it this way, like Aladdin's, most of its sequels were direct to DVD. Toy Story had 3 sequels in the theater. We're getting a 4th, but there's no like established world built around Toy Story.
Right.
It's
all the world.
Right. I mean, obviously it's the world from a toy's perspective, but like you said with Harry Potter, it's its own universe that's already been built up through 7 books and the movies. Like, it's all there. They just had to translate it from the screen to the parks.
Yeah, so I think, like you guys were kind of saying, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I would barely call myself a Star Wars fan at all, honestly. Not that I think they're bad, that's not something I got into, I guess, in time to really get that emotional connection. Mm-hmm. But I'm really excited to see what they do with Galaxy's Edge because of this, because of the same concept where there's years and years and years of world building here. So they get to kind of do the same thing.
My whole thing that I've said since we started getting these announcements, I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I feel like Pandora was a knee-jerk reaction to Harry Potter. I feel like...
Yes, absolutely.
Disney saw that Universal was doing this big immersive world, and they were like, how can we do that? What can we rope our people in with? And honestly, I don't know, like, where the idea from Pandora came, like, whose idea it was to bring Pandora in. But they did a good job in, immersively theming everything there. But I really think that their answer is going to be in Galaxy's Edge. I think we've got that pre-established world. I think we've got the emotional attachment from plenty of generations that's going to be, like, if Disney doesn't nail Galaxy's Edge the way that Universal did with the Wizarding World, it's going to be very disappointing. And I think that at that point, I would have a little lost faith in Disney.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I feel like they have to, with the amount of money that's going into this. I mean, I feel like it's got to be big. It's got to be a huge answer. And I feel like, they're going to definitely try to outdo it. And I think we can see that with the development into the hotel and everything and all of this, this, where it's not just going to be a theme park and a hotel separate, that it's a storyline that you're working through.
Yeah.
That's why I really think that this is their answer, because, like, so far, everything we've seen, they are investing into it. They are answering with a good amount of money. And, I was looking at a thing today about the details for the Millennium Falcon attraction came out. And they've partnered with NVIDIA and, like, all these big graphical companies to make this, like, a very big deal. Disney's investing so much into this that it's crazy. And I think that if they really work through it, we'll see a successor to this on our parks. It's funny how, we decided we were going to be a Universal podcast this week, and we still found a way to talk about Disney. But just for time's sake, let's take a little bit of some time to go through some of Islands of Adventure in its own respects, and talk about some of the stuff that's here, because I think there are a lot more attractions here. A lot of Universal Studios is the screen-based rides with things like The Simpsons and Minions and Shrek 4D all being essentially in a theater. But this side of the park has attractions like Jurassic Park. Spider-Man's here, that's a screen ride. You have Hulk, which is a roller coaster. Anything notable that you want to talk about? Anything that you think is a must-do for either of you?
I think the Incredible Hulk coaster definitely is. If you're a roller coaster fan, it's a very intense coaster, but I remember loving it as a kid.
Yeah, it is a really great coaster, and I haven't been since, but it actually just recently got some major upgrades from what I heard, which, interestingly enough, is because of the contract that they have, because apparently there's a clause in there that they have to, like, the attractions that they have based on the Marvel characters that they have to be updated every 4 years or something, or that they, like, risk losing the theme park rights or something like that. So I would be interested to go back and see what kind of upgrades they made, because it's a really solid coaster. Oh, another side note that I would like to point out to people who are not familiar with Universal is that there are certain rides, this being one of them, where not only can you not have a backpack like you can on every single Disney ride, you cannot have anything in your pockets at all. But there are lockers directly outside the gates of the ride, where I think they give you a certain amount of time free based on how long the line is. So you can put your stuff in a locker, just be prepared for that, and don't try to sneak around it, because there's legitimately there's metal detectors and stuff. And I went with one of the people that I went with a few years ago had zippered pockets. So he's like, oh, well, my pocket zips, so I don't need to take any stuff out. Nope. They made him turn around and put it in the locker.
Wow.
Yeah, they're so really good
they don't
about
play.
that. Right. They're really good about that. And like you said, the lockers, you do get a free period on them, which is something that's great. I really like that, even being a big theme park person, being a big attraction person, like, we have a Six Flags up here. We go to that fairly often because it was really cheap to get season tickets for that. So they make you check stuff into lockers too, but not to this degree, and you have to pay for it every time. The fact that, you're going into this park, you're paying all that money to get in there, and they're giving you lockers for free, like, that just is a nice little benefit.
Yeah, for sure. And this goes... Sorry, I was just going to say, this goes for most of the major rides, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I'm pretty sure the Harry Potter rides, you have to use a locker. Any roller coaster, you're going to have to use a locker. Pretty much, I think anything that you're not going to be sitting in a car that moves on a track on the ground.
Yeah, I know, like, specifically, that Rip Rocket had metal detectors, Dragon Challenge used to have them, and I think Hulk does, but I'm not 100% sure on Hulk.
It definitely does.
So,
At least it did when I went in, like, 2015.
So, you know what's really funny to me about staying in this little section of the Marvel Superhero Island? This part of the park feels so dated to me. Like, so dated. But I think it has two of the best attractions outside of Wizarding World.
Absolutely.
I would argue that Hulk and Spider-Man are two of the best, attractions in this part of the park. And that's weird because Spider-Man's also one of those screen-based attractions, but I think that was one that they did really well with too.
Yeah, that's another ride that I would say is probably in my top 10. Just how it's very immersive. It's really cool. They did a great job with the effects. But like you were saying about it being dated, I don't know if this is the way that the queue still is. And I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but at least back when I went a few years ago, the queue, you're like looking into the office of like the newspaper.
Yeah.
And it looks awful. Like there's like a donut prop like sitting on someone's desk, but you can't even really tell it's a donut or like a bagel. It's like gray because it's so old. It looks so bad, and I'm just like, this would not take that much money for you guys to spruce this room up. And this is like a big chunk of the queue is you walking around this box of offices. And I just thought that was just crazy going from Disney to this and seeing like, why is there a gray bagel on that desk?
No, I totally agree with that. I don't know if it's gotten fixed up since I've been there, but I do remember it being like a little weird. But the one thing that's really kind of turned me off about this, and this is weird for me because like I've grown up kind of with like the Marvel thing, but everything, and this is going to be super nitpicky, and I'm so sorry, but everything attraction-wise is based on like the 90s cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of cool. Like, I really like that. Like, you go in Spider-Man, they're playing clips from the Spider-Man attraction. If you go into Doctor Doom, in, like, that one section, they're playing clips from the the Fantastic Four show, and they have, like, clips of him in there, too. Like, even down to the costumes of the characters that come out, they're all very much based on, like, the 90s cartoons of these superheroes. And then you look at the atmosphere, and it feels like it's pulled out of a comic book. Like, the way that the buildings are shaped and the fact that they have the comic book panels and stuff like that. Like, it's super nitpicky of me to kind of, like, criticize that because, yeah, it's all Marvel, and I see that that's what they were doing with it. But, like, for me, and being the Disney fan that I am and, wanting the theming to stay cohesive, if they could have just picked one, I think I would have been a little bit happier with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I really like the kind of, I don't want to say vintage because then I feel old, but I like that aspect of it, but I agree with the cohesiveness.
There's a comic book store in here too that I really like. They don't have a lot, but it's fun to kind of walk in there and peruse a little bit. But other attractions you guys want to talk about? I know I want to talk about one specifically, but I want to see if anybody else brings this one up.
I not necessarily like a big discussion on a couple of things, but I did want to bring up one thing being the I can't remember the name, but it's the Transformers meet and greet.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool.
Which I haven't done it, but I've watched videos of it, and I think that this is a thing that it's basically, it's like talking Mickey, but it's like actually a person talking. Like if I'm not mistaken. It's just like a voice changer.
Yeah, and that's actually on the other side. That's on Studios, if I remember. Yeah, it is. But the cool thing about that is it's really like you're meeting a Transformer. Like, there's no other way that they could have done that to be more, like, fitting of the idea that they were going for.
Yeah, and I wonder, because this has been, like, they implemented it so successfully, why has Disney been so hesitant to do something similar?
Not only
Is it
hesitant.
like, would it be that hard to make a voice changer that sounds like Mickey Mouse or whoever?
Well, geez, I mean, I was not even hesitant. Like, Disney's taking away the one similar thing that they have to this.
Right, yeah, exactly. And I guess my point being that even with the talking Mickey, if you don't want the magic spoiled, pause here or fast forward a little bit. But, you know, it's a person in a costume with a speaker in the room with you. And then behind the scenes in a different room, it's a person with, from what I understand, is basically a soundboard. Have you guys heard similarly?
I think that, I mean, the one time I did it, it was, you know, kind of clear that there was, like, pre-scripted stuff, you know, that was being said.
Right. And it, like, don't get me wrong, it has a huge, like, choice, like a huge list of phrases and words and whatever that it can choose from, so it holds a pretty cohesive conversation. But I think that if you could just make a voice changer, that would take the, first of all, that's a cast member you're not having to pay to run the thing behind the scenes. Second of all, that's making it a more realistic experience, and third, you could do it for any character.
I mean, not even, I mean, with, like, Mickey, I don't even think you need to do a voice changer if you can just, you know, hire people that have decent enough voice acting skills. I don't think Mickey's that hard of one to do, you know?
Yeah. I guess my only thing is maybe if the voice was coming from inside that it would sound muffled, but I mean, they could just attach a microphone and have it come out the speaker like they do now.
Right.
But yeah, so that was one thing that I want Disney to take notes. And the other thing I wanted Disney to take notes was, which they kind of have started with, you know, the different Magic Band experiences that you can do. But the E.T. ride.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's obviously, you could, if you're not a little kid, you can figure it out. Because you get your, like, pass or whatever at the beginning that you have to tell them what your name is so you can get your pass, but then they take your name and put it in the thing, and then when you pass by E.T. at the end, he says, like, bye Beth, bye Mario, bye Brian. And I just remember being like 6 years old and thinking that's the coolest thing ever. It's like, what? And I know that Disney's doing similar things with Magic Bands, but if they were doing this in the early 90s, like, why can't Disney do more stuff like this? You see what I mean?
Yeah. So funny thing, I kind of have to tell this story because it's really funny. But E.T.'s really good with sub names. Have you, like, obviously, you know, your name's not that uncommon, Beth. So, like, when E.T. said your name, it was probably pretty easy for you to be like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like, he got my name right? Mm-hmm. When we went to Universal, this was, like, the trip of people just butchering my name. So, I had to go back through my pictures, and there's a couple things that were really funny. But we went to Starbucks in the morning of that trip, and they spelled my name Marea, which is, like, so out there for my name. Like, they really butchered it. But whatever, that's not the point. But we go on ET, and I'm, you know, my name's Mario, my dad's name's Mario, and, like, we both have the same name, and we're sitting, like, one card apart, and we're on the attraction, and E.T. goes, he says my mom's name, he says my girlfriend's name, and he goes, goodbye, Mario. And I'm like, wait, what was that? And he did it again for my dad, and, like, we both kind of looked at each other like, well, that's different.
It's a me, Mario.
Well, he didn't even like it. Wasn't even like he tried. He was like, "But Rio."
Was E.T. behind the counter at Starbucks too?
That's what I was thinking. And it's like, that same day, someone at Starbucks spelled my name like almost identically to how he pronounced it. And I was like, is Universal like trying to pull one over on me?
He's got this conspiracy going on here.
Rough day.
But E.T. is also in studios too, so check that out. That's a weird spot for that attraction, if I remember correctly. It's like all the way in the back and like tucked away from everything.
Yeah, sorry I keep flip-flopping. I'm not as familiar with these parks.
It's okay. I'm looking at maps, so that's the only reason that I knew that it was in a different park. But real quick, I want to hit on a couple things before we close out this week. But Jurassic Park, did you do that attraction at all? Because that's another one of my favorites here.
Mm-hmm.
I did too.
I love this attraction. I also am a huge Jurassic Park fan. Like, I was that kid in like elementary school that could tell you all the names of the dinosaurs, and like that was me. So growing up, like I loved Jurassic Park the movie, and like this was super cool for me. I think this is an attraction that is showing its age a little bit, but it's in a charming way. I think the animatronics here have that kind of like they aged well, and they could probably do with re-theming them and rehauling them. But I don't think that I would care if they didn't. But the other thing that they have here that's really cool is they have the Dino Institute Center or whatever it's called.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And that's really neat too, because that's also kind of tying the theming in. The thing that I like about Islands of Adventure is that it does have little chunks. We're probably not going to have too much time to talk about them, but you have like the Dr. Seuss Landing, which is all Dr. Seuss theme. You have the Cat in the Hat dark ride and the train and everything. You have Lost Continent, which is like Poseidon.
Which that's actually a pretty cool show.
Yeah, the stuff in that area is really cool. Like they do a very good job of like cohesively theming things on a small scale in Islands of Adventure. Mm-hmm. But again, it's that whole rule of sightlines that we talked about with Diagon Alley and Wizarding World and all that. You can, like, if I'm standing in Jurassic Park, I actually remember doing this. We were walking out of the Dino Land Institute, and I took a picture across the lake of the Lost Continent because it was right there and I could see it.
Yeah.
And, like, that's a little bit jarring for me as a Disney fan, but it's still cool. They do theming really well on a smaller scale and everything. But any attractions before I tie up Islands of Adventure real quick, because I want to bring it back to Universal Studios for something else before we close out this week.
I just want to give a throwback to the Jaws ride because that was emotionally scarring as a 6-year-old. But it was awesome as an adult. Or a kind of adult, a young adult.
I heard a lot of people were really upset when they closed that, and I can believe it because of how, like, how I've seen ride-throughs and stuff of it. I kind of wish that I got to live through that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool. It was kind of like a scary thriller version of Jungle Cruise. Like, you have a skipper on the boat with you that's taking you around and has, I don't know if they probably took this out towards the end, but at one point I remember him having a fake shotgun to shoot the shark with, and literally like a dead shark at the end. So it's not family friendly necessarily, but it was pretty cool anyway.
Yeah, for listeners, and I don't know if y'all ever watched the DefunctLand YouTube channel, but he did a very good one on Jaws.
Nice. I'll have to check it out and relive my terror.
His channel is really good. Definitely recommend that one if you're into like Disney and actually theme park pass, because he does a lot of Universal stuff too.
Oh, he does a lot more even than just Disney and Universal. It's a very cool channel.
Yeah. But last thing I want to kind of tie this up with, because we all talk about like Disney and big events and things that they do really well, like, Not So Scary and Very Merry Christmas. But Universal has kind of an answer to that in Universal Studios, which is their October, I want to say September, November Halloween special event. I've never done this personally, but I do have a little bit of knowledge on it. It's called Halloween Horror Nights. Super cool idea. Definitely not a kid thing because it is horror themed. Mm-hmm. And it's very much like a haunted attractions type thing. They close down a lot of the attractions that are in the theaters and do like haunted house build outs through them. They have scare zones with people dressed up in character costumes and like different, horror makeups and stuff like that, that their whole purpose is to scare you. And they have a bunch of like special shows and stuff like that. Definitely something to look into if you're a horror fan. But I did want to bring mention to that just to kind of tie it into the related topic of things that Disney does and things that you might be in the area for. I don't know if either of you have any point of reference on this one.
I've never done Halloween Horror Nights, but I follow it pretty much every year, and that's kind of saying something because I am not at all a fan of horror films. I like a good thriller, but as far as like strictly horror, kind of gory, like keep you up at night kind of movies, typically I hate them unless they have a really good storyline. But I, at the same time, find like prop and I guess like, I don't know, the way that they set up the haunted houses to look so good, like identical to what they're supposed to be representing is really cool to me. And I like watching the videos where people walk through them with the, like, not people jumping out at you, like the press people. So especially like if, like you said, if you're a horror fan, this is the event for you because they really do it well. They have, and they keep it current, which is really cool too. So they have like the Walking Dead horror house, like haunted house, and they had like a Silent Hill one, which Silent Hill is one of the few scary movies that I actually do like, even though it creeps me out. What were some of the other ones?
They did Halloween last year. They do like their own non-IP themed stuff too. Like they've done one year they did a 3D Alice in Wonderland maze. Like this is a thing that I know I could never go to, specifically for the fact that like I'm not the biggest horror person and my girlfriend scares super easily. The most scary thing that we'll do is like our local haunted hayride. But this is something I know that I probably will not experience. But again, like you, I follow this every year. They start announcing stuff. I'm there online with people, like waiting for them to announce something or trying to solve the puzzles that they're throwing out there. One of the cool things that Universal really does with this is they are very good about their social media presence. Like they'll release things online. Like if you follow their Twitter, they have a Twitter specifically for horror nights. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff with that, and I think that just alone makes me want to like experience this event just from that perspective.
Yes, so there's a theme park here that's like on the border of South and North Carolina called Carowinds, and every Halloween or every October they do Scarowinds, which is a way smaller version of this. And I went one year, and even that, like they didn't even have anything like really recognizable. It was all pretty much stuff that they made up. Even that was like really cool. So I don't know how I would handle this in particular because I feel like they would do it way better and way scarier. But I do want to kind of go out of my comfort zone and give it a shot one day.
Yeah. They have a deal right now, which this is actually like not bad at all. It's Halloween Horror Flex Nights Sunday through Friday plus one free night. It's $79.99 for one night, and it looks like you get a free night included, which is really like not bad at all. But it ends like June 6th, which is probably when they're going to start like announcing the houses and stuff like that. But the offer says come any one event night and get another night free. Both nights must be Sunday through Friday. So that's a pretty cool deal. I would definitely say that's, if you're looking to check it out, that's probably a good way to check it out.
Sunday through Friday, meaning not Saturday.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's reading. It says Sunday through Friday, and it looks like they might have select nights, but it looks like the only day that's specifically excluded, is Saturday. But the majority, actually, Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday, it looks like are the nights that they're not really running it. But I mean, I think if I'm in the area this year, I might try to push to go to it. I might. Probably not going to, but I might.
I'll try to be brave one year.
But the last thing I wanted to tie this whole show up with, because we get this question fairly regularly in some emails we've been getting, is how would you combine Universal with a Disney trip? You know, would you give it, how many days would you give it? What's your overall like view on Universal tying into your Disney trip?
I think that depends entirely on the people in your party. Specifically, if you have small children, I would not spend more than a day, you know, like maybe a park hopper, because I don't think there's really, unless your kid's like a huge thrill seeker, in which case awesome, but I don't think that there's a whole lot for small children here other than maybe the Dr. Seuss part and the part that has like the Minions and Shrek and stuff. Because it's really thrill based, and a lot of it's like more mature themes. So I would say if you have small children, spend a day, maybe two. If you're a thrill seeker, like I think Mario, like you said earlier, I would say 3 days tops. Yeah. To cover pretty much everything you want to.
And the big thing about that, like I kind of want to touch base with what I said on that earlier. My ideal, I mean, for me and anyone I'm touring with, the reason I say 3 days is because I want to spend a whole day in, both Harry Potter parks. If you're not a thrill seeker, if you're not into immersion of parks and you just want to go and ride some rides, you could easily do it in 2 days. When we went with my whole family and we rented the shuttle back and forth, we had 3-day tickets because they were running a deal. And another nice thing that Universal does is they'll run deals every now and then where you can get like an extra day for free. But we paid for 2-day tickets with the park hopping option, and we got a 3rd day for free. We didn't even go back the 3rd day. We did the attractions on one side of the park we wanted to do. We went back and we did the attractions we wanted to do on the next day. But when my mom, my dad, my girlfriend, and me, we stayed there, we stayed for 4 days, I want to say. And actually, no, we stayed for 5. And we did so much that I honestly think that we got our money's worth out of it. You could easily do a whole day in CityWalk if you want to walk around and look at the stores or, experience some of the like entertainment options that they have there. Probably like a half day. I wouldn't even say a whole day. You could do the parks each a day, and you could do the Wizarding World parks in a day. So that's 4 days there, and then a day to recap the rides you wanted to do again. There's a lot to do in these parks, and like you said, Beth, it's really hard to kind of gauge that option depending on like what kind of person you are. But coming from a Disney perspective, I think that definitely you're going to want to see Wizarding World. That's the one thing that you're definitely going to want to spend at least a whole day in the 2 parks together.
Yeah. And I will say that even if you're not a thrill seeker, like try to take yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit if you can, especially for the Harry Potter roller coaster, because it is 100% worth it. I think my boyfriend does not like roller coasters, and he actually didn't even ride this with me when we went, but I talked so highly of it. He was like, okay, well, next time I'm riding it. I don't even like roller coasters. It just sounds so awesome. So I I would urge you to do things that you wouldn't normally do, because a lot of times I think you would be missing out if you didn't.
Yeah, I totally agree. What about you, Brian? Do you have any thoughts? I know you said that you really don't do Universal too often, but after we've talked about this, what do you feel?
Well, so, like I said, I haven't been in close to 10 years, so I don't feel super qualified to actually answer the question. But back to the question itself about, if you're going on a trip to Disney, how many days should you spend in Universal? And I feel like a lot of, especially first-time people, kind of ask this question because they think, okay, Disney has 4 parks. Say if I'm going for a week, and I spend a day in each park, what do I do with the last 3 days of my trip? And I would just, say that there's definitely enough stuff at Disney to fill out a week. So, I wouldn't feel like if you're planning a Disney vacation that if you do it right, you're not going to have to fill time, Mm-hmm. But, that being said, when I went as a younger kid, and obviously this was before a lot of the newer stuff got open, when we were splitting time, we usually spent 2 days at Universal, and then the rest of the time at Disney. So now I would say, just going off of what I know and what I've looked up with it, Harry Potter stuff, that you could definitely spend 3 days between the parks, like at Universal. So
yeah.
I also think on Brian's point, since we are a Disney podcast, I feel like we should definitely touch base with this. But if this is your first time trip, not to rag on Universal or anything, but really take the time to experience Disney as itself and as its own park. We've talked a lot about Universal today and how many good things there are. And I honestly, even coming from the perspective that I've stayed on Universal property and I've really enjoyed that experience, I think giving each park their own identities and, time to just really enjoy the experience you have in either of them is really necessary to enjoying both theme park companies for what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would also say that if you are dead set on doing Disney and Universal in one trip and it's maybe your first time or first time in a long time, you don't go very often kind of thing, I would probably suggest to do Universal first, because I think that Disney does things a lot differently than Universal, and in my opinion, Disney would be the kind of the grand finale versus Universal being the appetizer,
Yeah, that's a very good thing to talk about. And you know what? I'll throw it out there. I know a lot of people that actually prefer Universal to Disney. It's all preference. You can find things to do in either park that you'll really enjoy. But
true.
I also think people that are fans of Disney should experience Universal. I think you should, if you're a Universal fan, you should experience Disney. If you're a Disney fan, you should experience Universal. Take that time to kind of look over the fence and see what the other side is offering, because you'll definitely enjoy it, I think.
I agree, and it's very different experiences, but both of them are good.
It's funny. I want to read this one email real quick, but I want to tell this other story. After the first couple of times my girlfriend and I went to Disney, we were really trying to find people to go back with us. We were talking to friends and stuff. They were like, "Oh yeah, I kind of want to go to Disney." We're like, "We'll go with you." But one specifically that we had talked to was my cousin, who had gone all the time with us when we went with our family, and his roommate, who we're all really good friends with, who had never been. And she's not a Disney person. She does not like Disney movies at all. She had a roommate in college that was all princess obsessed. So she's like, "I will never go to Disney World and enjoy it." And we're like, "No, you really have to you have to trust us. You have to go." And she's like, "Well, she would find every excuse to write it off." And she's like, "But you know what, if we want to go to Florida, I'll go to Universal." And I asked her the question. I was like, "Well, why don't you want to go to Disney?" And she's like, "Well, I'm not a big rides person. I don't really like the Disney characters, so I don't think it's for me." And she's like, "Honestly, I think I could spend a week in the Wizarding World parks." And I went, "Well, we can go to Epcot. We won't really see many characters. There's not a lot of thrill rides. You pretty much wrote out Universal for that." But I every time someone asks me, should I go to Universal on this Disney trip, I always make it a point to tell them, look at what's there, look at what they offer, and make sure that that's what you want. But that was my little story. Now, the tie-in that I kind of wanted to read this email, I don't want to go too in-depth because we're really pushing time limits here. But Isella sent us an email last week, said, first of all, I love your podcast. You guys light my Disney fire so much. This episode gave me so many emotions in reference to our Disney extinct attractions for rides that I wasn't alive for. I was surprised to hear all these fun facts and reminisce about those rides I do remember. She had talked about some of the other episodes she likes with, recommended a YouTube channel called Bright Sun Films, which I'm definitely going to check out because apparently they talk about failed projects and stuff similarly to DefunctLand. So that's really cool. I'm ready to check them out, and I'll probably report back with my feelings on that. But she was the one that had mentioned that she gets questioned a lot about how to put Universal into a Disney trip, and she wanted to hear our thoughts. So that was kind of why we wanted to push for a Universal show this week. But the one thing that she wanted to say was her little note at the bottom said, P.S., you know how you mentioned that there are probably one listener who is really sad that Stitch's Great Escape was closed. Yep, that's me. You found her. Let me know if anybody else, if you find anybody else, I'll start a support group. And I really wanted to read that on air because that made me laugh a little bit. So thank you for your kind words. We always really enjoy when people send us emails.
Definitely.
We had a couple other ones, but we'll save them for next week. So if you emailed us, you said anything to us, be patient. We're going to get to them. We're starting to kind of get to the point now where we're getting some questions, which doesn't mean stop sending us stuff. But if we don't read it, we'll make it a point to make sure to get to it. So that was all I wanted to say. Anything else you guys wanted to say before we tie this week up?
I think I'm good.
I think I'm good too. Thanks for joining us again on a special episode of the Station 90 podcast. Be sure to tune in next week where we return to our regularly scheduled program as the Station 71 podcast, where we're talking all things Disney. If you want to get in touch with us, find us on facebook.com/Station71pod, Twitter @Station71pod, Instagram @Station71podcast, and you can shoot us an email at station71podcast@gmail.com. While you're listening to the end of this episode, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you happen to get your podcasts from. That way you don't miss an episode. And while you're there, leave a review as well. That really helps us out, and we'd be happy to address any questions, comments, concerns that you might have on the show. Thanks again for joining us on this very special episode of the Station 90 podcast. We hope you enjoyed your ride, and we'll see you real soon.